has co-opted. And so many in the Black community, if I'm being honest with you, because I want to be, believe that you are being used as a pawn by the right and that you're a charlatan of sorts.
He's not a Republican.
So how do you...
He's never voted for a Republican.
You've said that you're a conservative.
No.
No, you did. You actually said that in the podcast that you did 2 weeks ago.
I said I was a conservative.
Yes, you did. So, but my question to you is, how do you respond to those critics?
Okay, let him answer.
First thing I think it's very important. The quote that you just pointed out about doing something special for the Negro. That's from the book Why We Can't Wait that I just mentioned.
Yes.
A couple paragraphs later, he lays out exactly what that something special was, and it was the Bill of Rights for the Disadvantaged, a broad class-based policy.
But he also says you must include race.
No, he didn't. He says it's
Yes, he does.
Okay, well, everyone should go read the book Why We Can't Wait. Let's not get sidetracked by that.
Yeah.
I don't think I've been co-opted by anyone. I've only voted twice, both for Democrats. Although I'm an independent, I would vote for a Republican, probably a non-Trump Republican if they were compelling. I don't think there's any evidence I've been co-opted by anyone, and I think that's an ad hominem tactic people use to not address really the important conversations we're having here. And I think it's better, and it would be better for everyone if we stuck to the topics rather than make it about me with no evidence that I've been co-opted.
I want to give you the opportunity to respond to the,
I appreciate
the criticism.
I appreciate it. There's no evidence that I've been co-opted by anyone. I have an independent podcast. I work for CNN as an analyst. I write for the Free Press. I'm independent in all of these endeavors, and no one is paying me to say what I'm saying. I'm saying it because...
What's going on, everyone? Sauce King here today. We're going to watch this video with The View versus Coleman Hughes, I think that's how you say his name. And as you saw in the intro, he's an independent. And the problem I have with the left is that they're so... if this doesn't show you the Overton window of how far left the left has become, it's crazy to me that someone who even says something slightly conservative is considered a right wing. Oh, you believe in free speech? Oh, you believe in being colorblind? When if you were a 2008 Democrat, you would have been agreeing with this man. It's so baffling to me how dude works as a CNN as a contributor, independent podcast, but for some reason he's being used as a pawn of the right. And and I agree with Coleman Hughes' argument there, and that's the same argument that I even prescribe as well, is that people attack your character more than they actually attack your argument. They try to find ways to discredit you. They try to find ways to label you. They try to find ways to smear you just so they don't have to confront with the inconvenience of the position, of the evidence that you laid out before them. Here's another example. Another right winger, Xavier. I don't know how to say his last name, so I won't butcher it. The left creates an education system that has left over 80% of its black kids illiterate. You know who else couldn't read? Slaves. The left created policies to incentivize fatherless homes, which is across the board, regardless of your race, right? Because one thing I want to try to do nowadays is not focus so much on the impacts of how policies affect just one group of people, but how it affects everybody. The left has created a failed education system that has harmed over 76% of American children, right? You see it with Gen Z, where they do these videos saying, oh, can you tell time, U.S. history? Gen Z children can't even quote history properly. They can't even prescribe history properly. And Sonny Holston is a prime example of what's going on in our country.
Is explain to folks what you mean by this. Arguments for a colorblind America. What do you mean when you say that?
So a lot of people equate colorblindness to I don't see race or to pretending not to see race. I think that's a big mistake. We all see race, right? And we're all capable of being racially biased, so we should all be self-aware to that possibility. My argument is not for that. My argument is that we should try our very best to treat people without regard to race, both in our personal lives and our public policy.
Of course.
And the reason I wrote this book, thank you. The reason I wrote this book is because in the past 10 years, it has become very popular to, in the name of anti-racism, teach a kind of philosophy to our children and in general that says your race is everything. Right? And I think that is the wrong way to fight racism, and that's why I wrote this book at this time.
I'm sorry, baby.
Yeah.
Can I just point out that there is a reason for that? You know, when I went to school, getting any information about anyone's race was not taught in history. There was no black history. None of those things were taught. And here in America, 100 years ago when I was a young woman, that's how people saw you. That's how they judged you. So I think, I don't want to say it's your youth, but I think you have a point, but I think you have to also take into consideration what people have lived through.
Here's where I have a problem with that. Because to me, I could equate it as update your software. You want me to judge America where it was instead of where it's at. And that's the biggest argument I have against a lot of the old heads in my life, in the comment section, that try to pull the seniority. Oh, I'm elderly. I lived 100 years ago, 20 years ago. I experienced more racism than you ever had, Kenny. And instead of noting that as, oh, there's progress in our social fabric in the United States of America, instead of highlighting that, no, you want me to feel as resentful as you did in the past because you experienced something that I never experienced. Just like you never experienced slavery, I never experienced the same volume or level or quality of racism that you faced in the past. That in of itself should show progress. So when young men like me are saying, racism is not a big issue in my life, racism equates to about 4% of my problems, racism can't stop me, old heads get mad, and I don't understand that. Racism is almost being treated like a religion. And I want to kind of highlight the point that Coleman is bringing up, is that he wants colorblindness as an ideal. Me, when I hear colorblindness, I think, hey, you don't judge someone solely on their race. You judge them on other factors as well, right? Even if you may have a negative bias against their race, you attribute other factors to making them as a whole. You recognize race as a factor, but not the factor. That's what makes you not a racist. And I think that's the policy that I want to push in society. I think that's the position that I want in America. But for too many times, these CRT people, if you see some of my infographics that I like to put on my screen, critical race theory teaches you that your race is everything, that your whole life is dictated by your race, that if you're born white, you're inherently racist. You're inherently evil. You're inherently bad, right? And I like the colorblindness theory that Coleman brings up, because you don't want to have a bias against someone and you don't want to try to judge someone by their race. But black people, white people are being pushed this idea that you have to judge people by their race. White liberals have a negative bias against their own group of people. Look up the stats. Black people have a negative bias against white people solely because of what? Their skin color. This is why I say Martin Luther King will roll over in his grave right now if he saw society the way it is. He fought, he protested, he took all the tribulations and trials that he went through. Hell, he even died just so for his descendants, people of his ilk, to come down and try to revigorate segregation and call it black-only spaces. Look at the idiocy of the left. This is why I said progressive education has made our children dumber. And people in the comment section try to argue with that. Look at Illinois. Look at Baltimore. Black kids can't read. Sorry, children can't read. Public school, government schools are focusing on these trendy little things, teaching your kids how to be LGBT, teaching them about pronouns, teaching them about how to be activists, instead of practical skills that will actually benefit them, actually make them critical thinkers. Progressives cannot allow critical thinking, because if critical thinking was allowed to be taught in school, no one would fall for socialism. No one will fall for those false promises. No one will be naive enough to believe that someone's going to be out there and looking out for their own good without any benefit for themselves. That goes against human nature. And even the fact that they can't even take an independent black man talking. Because unlike Coleman, I actually say I am a conservative. I actually label myself that. He doesn't. He said he's an independent. And just because he's an independent, because he's willing to consider Trump, look how they get at him. Imagine if I was on there. Oh, they would be really mad. You see how mad Sonny Holston was in the intro? All he did was lightly push back against that view. All he tried to say is something that I think every centrist, any center-right, center-left person, any classical liberal would agree with. Hey, we shouldn't judge people on the color of their skin. Agreed. Me, I say, hey, yo, race has a minimum factor in my life. Racism can't stop me. You can't even pay a racist to stop me. How mad you think Sonny Holston will be hearing me say that? My own life is a testament to that. I came from the hood, came from Little Haiti in Miami, Florida, right? Raised by a single mom. I had my father in my life. I think that's what differentiate me against other people. My black father happened to be a conservative Republican. I think he's a George Bush Republican, but you know, still a Republican. So he tried to push those values in me. He put that confidence in me to like, hey, look, you don't have to conform to the crowd. And that's where I get this, hey, I don't need to conform to what everyone does. I don't need to get in line. I have a voice, I have opinions, and I speak them. And if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. I'll admit it. I'm not shy about that. I think what set me apart from a lot of people is I'm not scared to fail. I'm not scared to fail in public. I'm not scared to get embarrassed because you only can do that to me once. At least that's the idea I take. But I want to continue watching the rest of this video and this clip. So let's continue on the clip and see where Coleman takes the conversation forward. Let's take a look.
Appointing of very specific racial things, like women couldn't get into colleges. If you were a black person, there were a lot of colleges wouldn't accept you. Trying to equal the playing field. I think that's what a lot of folks have been trying to do. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
I think that's your experience, and that's valid. You know, as a counterpoint, when I was in 5th grade, we all watched Roots together.
Yeah.
In public school.
Yeah.
So these are different experiences. I think it's also different generations. It's different parts of the country, right? We have very different cultures all living together in one country. So I'm not going to deny that, but I view this notion of a colorblind society similar to the idea of a peaceful society, which is to say it's an ideal, it's a North Star. And the point is not that we're ever going to get there, we're not going to touch it, but we have to know when we're going forward and when we're going backwards. And we're going backwards when we're doing woke kindergarten in San Francisco. You didn't hear about this story?
No, but
wait, because I want to get to the part of the book.
Okay,
You believe that public policies that address socioeconomic differences would be better at benefiting disadvantaged groups, and that race-based policies often hurt the very people they're trying to help. What are some examples of policies that would be better at reducing racial disparities?
So my overall argument is that class, socioeconomics, is a better proxy for disadvantage. We all want to help the disadvantaged, and the question is, how do we identify them, right? The default right now in a lot of areas of policy is to use Black and Hispanic identity as a proxy for disadvantage. And my argument is that you actually get a better picture of who needs help by looking at socioeconomics and income. That picks out people in a more accurate way.
Coleman's 100% right here. If you want to help the disadvantaged, you have to make it class-based. It cannot be based on race. That's racism. That's what I'm saying. Like, the left is going backwards. Like, and I already make this point. I don't think I need to make it again, but I will on this channel if it's the first time you're watching me. Is that I believe, and I know, if you look at history, segregation was started by a progressive, Woodrow Wilson. Yes, he federalized segregation. Okay. A lot of the racist sentiments in the progressive movement, such as Margaret Sanger, talking about how, this genetic determinism, they believe that black people were genetically inferior to white people, and they believe that there should have been less of them. Black women, you're doing a good job, right? 40% of abortions are by black women. If you want to help the disadvantaged, you cannot focus on race, because how are you going to help 13% of the population? Right, you want to focus on blacks and Hispanics, but they're the minority when it comes to food stamps. Now, this is still not a good look for blacks, because obviously you're only 13% of the population, and the white community is 65% of the population, and only 33% of food stamps are held by white people. So that's still not a good look on black folks. But if you just say, hey, we want to help poor people, this will help all groups of people, because at the end of the day, I use this argument a lot, and then I'll end off this video. My kids are going to have a way better economic status than I had as a child. And my mixed kids is going to be pretty advantaged. And imagine you had a single mom. She happens to be white. Her son is white. And he's coming up the system. And you're going to slander him as having white privilege, when majority of the poor people, if I go by class, majority of the poor people are white. So then you're going to see my kid, and you're going to have a racial bias. I can even say that racist assumption. My mixed kids is disadvantaged. Oh, look, he's half black. Oh, you poor half black kid. Oh, here we gonna lower the bar for you. When I've been training him to compete with Asian kids, like, so you're gonna give him an unfair advantage over the white kid. How is that not black privilege? How is that not minority privilege? And you see the problem here. Anti-racism is racism. Reverse discrimination is discrimination. This is the communist tactic of doublespeak. You speak in a way that sounds plausible, sounds nice. You put it in a colorful language, but the action in of itself is wrong, is immoral, is discriminatory. But you use that sweet sounding language to justify the actions. And this is all it is. Just one big moral indignation of rationalizing discrimination, special treatment, or putting handicaps based on someone's race. Asian and white people get a handicap. Black people, minorities, Hispanics, they get a leg up. An Asian student has to score 200 SAT scores higher than the average black person to get into the same school. But no one sees that problem. Oh, we need to give people a leg up. In what generation are you talking about? Black kids in my generation experience less racism than people in the past. Yet you want us to benefit from policies that were meant for people way back in the past. And even the special privileges. In one example, I'll put in, because I cut Coleman short in this clip, and you can watch the whole thing in the link in the description. Affirmative action. I gave you an argument, and based on data, there's a data to suggest that less kids graduate college after affirmative action was implemented. Because I believe that affirmative action set up these black kids going to Yale, going to these Ivy League schools, setting them up to fail, even if they're smart. Black kids that go into Yale, 77 percentile. But the average, if you just went solely on test scores, those black students who scored in the 77th percentile, they won't even make it in school. They will get rejected from Yale. Why? Because the average student that goes to Yale, they're in the 99th percentile. Top 1% of students. You're the top 13%. You're in the top 10. That's pretty good, black student. But as an affirmative action admissions, they lower the bar to put you in Yale, because Yale usually get the top 1% of students in the country. So by a comparison point of view, you didn't earn it on merit. Because this is some of the argument people say, oh, look, these black students that's going to Yale, they still have pretty high scores. Yeah, because you're not comparing it to the usual, the white and Asian students. They got way higher scores than what this student got. They're smarter in your comparison. This guy would have been this black student would have been a valedictorian in a public university. But you put him up in competition that he'll never compete in. It's like me putting a 5'5" basketball player and putting him against college kids that's destined to go to the NBA. It's going to be a night and day difference. But if he goes to your D3, D2, even Division I school, he'll be a great player, decent player, solid player. But you put him in comparison with professional basketball players or college athletes that are NBA bound, it's night and day difference. And this is essentially what you're doing to black students when you use affirmative action as an admissions. Because end of the day, my position has always been college filters for the best and brightest students already. And if they have to lower the standards to admit you the same way that removing the bar exam for lawyers, you know the quality is going to go down. We inherently know this. And instead of looking at it from a long-term perspective, saying, hey, how can we change education to better support poor students, disadvantaged students, so that way they have a better quality of education so they can better compete, instead of giving them the training equipment so they can train themselves, prepare themselves so they could have the skills and abilities to actually make it in academia without special treatment. No, we want to lower the bar and think that's going to give us a good outcome in society. And you already see what's going on. The bridge is falling down, airplanes falling apart in midair. Everyone's blaming it on DEI because we have bought this idea that sympathy, feelings, and coddling will make people better. Standards make people better. Expectations make people better. It is highlighted a problem that people have, that there's a shift and people notice the shift. And then the shift is we're not rewarding people based on the merit, based on qualifications, and based on their ability to actually do the job. We're basing it on some superficial, such as race, feelings, emotionalism, self-esteem. We're trying to protect people's self-esteem instead of telling them, hey, you're not good enough. You're not good enough to be this. You're not good enough to make it into an NBA that's 78% black. No one complains about that. No one says that that needs a DEI initiative. No one says we need affirmative action for white and Asian players. At least when you push for DEI everywhere, not only in some cases. I think people will take the left more seriously if they advocate for DEI across the board, but they don't. They only advocate for DEI where it's predominantly dominated by white and now Asian students or people. And that's just the inconvenient truth. If you look at the highest incomes are Asian. The richest people, the richest race in America right now is Asians. No, that's why they're getting discriminated against in Ivy League colleges, Ivy League schools. But you want anecdotal evidence? Nate, think back. Have you ever met a poor Asian before? You might have, but many of you will be like, "Damn, I have not really met a poor Asian before. I never seen a struggling single mom Asian woman before." It's rare. It happens. I know it happens. Someone's going to be able to give me an example, but it's rare, and that's the point. Culture decides outcomes. And I think as long as we hold on to this culture of trying to protect people's self-esteem instead of demanding more, instead of rising expectations, instead of giving people support earlier in life, not later in life where we're making special considerations for them in college, I think we're going to continue getting this outcome that we're getting today. But I digress. I know there's been a long rant. Let me know what you guys are thinking in the comment section below. I'd be interested to hear what you guys have to say. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. I really do appreciate you guys watching to the end of the video. And I'll catch you guys on the next one. Peace.